Jake Morrison walked into the huge council chamber for what he knew would be the last time. The tall alien beings looked down at him from their floating platforms. Their crystal bodies caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the walls. Jake had seen this sight 100 times before, but today felt different. He carried a simple briefcase with Earth's final request inside. 30 years of waiting. 30 years of being told to wait just a little longer. 30 years of watching. Other species get full membership while humans were kept as junior partners. The Zephyrian Prime Minister floated higher than the rest. His voice came through the translation device like breaking glass. The human representative may speak. Jake opened his briefcase and pulled out the petition. The same petition Earth had submitted 15 times before. The Terran Federation requests full membership in the Galactic Council. We have met every requirement you have set. Whispers filled the chamber. Some aliens made sounds Jake could not understand. Others tapped their limbs against their platforms. The Kreelan ambassador made a noise that sounded like laughing. Humans have provided military support in 12 major conflicts, Jake continued. We have shared our technology freely. We have followed every law and treaty. Our trade routes keep half the galaxy running. What more do you want? The Prime Minister's crystalline head turned toward the other council members. The application will be put to vote. Jake knew how this would end. He had watched the same show too many times, but he had to go through with it. The people of Earth needed to see their leaders try every peaceful option. One by one, the council members cast their votes. The giant screen above the chamber showed the results in real time. Red marks for no, blue marks for yes. Jake watched. The red marks pile up like a mountain. Final vote. 847 against, 23 in favor. The Prime Minister spoke again. The Council finds that humans lack the wisdom needed for full membership. Your species is too quick to anger, too ready to fight. You do not understand the peaceful ways that keep our galaxy stable. Jake felt his hands tighten into fists. Then he forced them to relax. These aliens talked about peace, but they had started more wars in the past decade than humans had fought in centuries. They talked about wisdom while their planets starved, because they refused to share resources. Furthermore, the Prime Minister continued, humans show dangerous independence. You question authority too often. True galactic citizens follow the guidance of their betters without complaint. That was the final insult. Jake had heard enough. He closed his briefcase with a loud snap that echoed through the chamber. I see, Jake said. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear the steel underneath. You want us to be good little servants forever, is that it? You will learn your place in time, said the Vorthan representative. Her tentacles waved in what Jake had learned was their version of a dismissive gesture. Young species always think they know better than their elders. Jake stood up slowly. In the observation deck above, he could see Captain Lisa Harper watching. She was head of Earth's military liaison team. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake knew she was thinking the same thing he was. This was it. This was the moment Earth had been preparing for, even though they hoped it would never come. Prime Minister, Jake said, I want to make sure I understand correctly. You are saying that no matter what humans do, no matter how much we help, no matter how much we give, we will never be equal partners in this council? That is correct. Some species are born to lead. Others are born to follow. This is the natural order. Jake nodded. Thank you for making that clear. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps loud in the silent chamber. But before reaching the door, he turned around one last time. I have a message for the council, Jake announced. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. All trade agreements are canceled. All military partnerships are ended. All diplomatic relations are terminated. The chamber exploded in noise. Aliens shouted in a dozen languages. The Prime Minister's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot survive without us. You need the Council. Jake smiled for the first time in months. We'll see about that. He walked out of the chamber and didn't look back. Lisa Harper was waiting for him in the corridor outside. "Well?" she asked. "It's done," Jake said. "Send the message to Earth. Operation Independence is a go." Within hours, every human ship in Council space received the same coded transmission. Evacuation would begin immediately. But this wasn't a retreat. This was the start of something new. Back on Earth, President Henry Wallace stood before the cameras in the White House. "Fellow citizens of Earth," he began, "today we take the first step toward true freedom. The Council has made their choice. Now we make ours." The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. They were about to discover that the junior species had been preparing for this day for years. Hidden shipyards, secret alliances, new technologies. Everything was ready. Jake Morrison had walked into that chamber as Earth's ambassador to the Council. He walked out as the man who started a revolution. The age of begging for scraps was over. The age of taking what they deserved had begun. Admiral Danny Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the flagship New York, watching the largest fleet movement in human history unfold before him. 2,000 ships stretched across space like a metal river flowing toward freedom. Each ship carried families, equipment, and hope for a better future. "Sir, the last transport just cleared the jump point," reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Barnes from her station. "All ships are clear of Council space." Danny nodded. "Send the all-clear signal to Earth Command. Phase 1 is complete." But this exodus was bigger than just humans leaving. In the cargo holds of many ships were representatives from other species that had grown tired of Council rule and wanted something better. The first to join had been the Keelans. Danny remembered when their leader Sixka had made contact, 6 months ago. The Council had been strip mining Keelan worlds for decades, taking their rare metals and giving almost nothing in return. When Sixka heard about humanity's secret preparations, he brought an offer. "My people have ships," Sixka had said through the translator. "My people have weapons. Most important, my people have hate for the Council. We will go with you." Now 50 Keelan vessels flew alongside the human fleet. Their ships looked like giant beetles made of metal, but they were fast and tough. Danny was glad to have them as allies instead of enemies. The Vex had joined next. The insect-like species brought something even more valuable than ships. They brought knowledge. Their biotechnology was centuries ahead of anything the Council used. Dr. Carol Webb, the fleet's chief scientist, had spent weeks learning from the Vex engineers. The things they could do with living tissue seemed like magic. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Ryan Parker, "we're receiving a message from the Arcturus system. It's the Deltan government. They want to join us too." Danny smiled. The Deltans controlled 3 star systems and had a strong merchant fleet. More importantly, they had been fighting Council tax collectors for months. "Tell them we'll be happy to meet with their representatives." This was the part the Council had not expected. They thought humans would run away alone and hide in some corner of the galaxy. They never imagined that dozens of other species were just waiting for someone to lead them away from Council oppression. Captain Amy Bennett piloted her scout ship Horizon ahead of the main fleet. Her job was to find safe worlds where the fleet could stop and resupply. But what she found in the Outer Rim was much more than that. "Danny, you need to see this." Amy's voice came through the comm system. She had found something in the Perseus system that made everyone excited. When the fleet arrived, they saw what Amy had discovered. 3 planets perfect for human life. Clean water, good air, rich soil. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the ruins. Ancient structures covered the largest planet. Some buildings were still working after thousands of years. The technology inside was more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen. Whoever built this understood science in ways we're just beginning to learn, Dr. Webb reported after her initial survey. "The power systems are still running. The computers are still active, and the weapons," she paused. "The weapons could defend an entire star system." Danny walked through the ruins with growing amazement. These ancient people had built cities that worked in harmony with nature. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. Most importantly, They had left behind records showing how different species could work together as equals. They faced the same choice we did, Amy said, reading from a translated text. Work within a corrupt system or build something new. They chose to build. Back in Council space, the effects of the human exodus were already being felt. Trade routes that had functioned for decades suddenly had no protection. Pirates attacked merchant ships that had always been safe under human escort. The Andromedans, one of the Council's founding species, sent urgent messages demanding that humans return to their duties. When no reply came, they sent warships to force the issue. Those warships found empty space where human bases used to be. The humans had taken everything: ships, equipment, even the orbital stations. Nothing remained but empty metal shells. On Earth, President Henry Wallace made his final speech from the White House before the seat of government moved to the colony ship New Washington. The entire planet watched as their leader spoke the words that would change everything. "We tried to work within their system for 30 years, Wallace said. "We followed their rules. We accepted their insults. We hoped that patience and good faith would earn us the respect we deserved. Today we know that hope was wasted." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "From this day forward, Earth charts its own course. We will build new homes among the stars. We will welcome any species that shares our values of freedom and equality, and we will prove that the Council's way is not the only way." The broadcast reached every human colony, every ship, every outpost. It also reached the hidden listening posts that human intelligence had placed throughout Council space. Within hours, resistance groups on a dozen worlds were declaring their independence. The Council had made one crucial mistake. They thought humans were just another species to be controlled. They never realized that humans had spent those 30 years learning, planning, and building alliances. Now the galaxy would see what humanity could do when they stopped asking permission and started taking action. Admiral Rodriguez looked out at the fleet spreading across 3 star systems. Human ships worked alongside Keelan vessels, Vex bioships, and Deltan traders. It was the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before, a truly equal partnership between species. The Council called it rebellion. Humanity called it evolution. 2 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and Chief Engineer Maria Santos had never been busier. She stood in the control room of Shipyard Alpha, watching dozens of construction crews work on the largest fleet ever built. The yard floated in space near the gas giant Kepler-7, hidden from Council scouts by the planet's magnetic field. "How many ships this month?" asked her assistant, Engineer Bob Phillips, as he handed her the daily reports. 47 completed. "Another 60 in various stages," Maria replied, checking her tablet. "The new design is working better than we hoped. The ships being built here were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They combined human engineering with Keelan metalworking and Vex biotechnology. The result was vessels that could repair themselves, adapt to new situations, and work together like a single organism." Down on the planet Haven, Administrator Paul Adams welcomed another transport full of refugees. These weren't humans. They were Council species who had finally gotten tired of the endless taxes, the corrupt officials, and the constant wars. "How many this week?" Paul asked his aide, Secretary Janet Cole, as they watched the latest arrivals. "Walk down the ramp." 347, Janet replied. "Mostly Altarians and Centaurans. They say conditions in their home systems are getting worse every month." Paul wasn't surprised. The Council was running out of money to fund their bloated bureaucracy, so they kept raising taxes on member species. Many planets were spending more on Council fees than on feeding their own people. Haven had become a symbol of what life could be like outside Council control. The planet had clean cities, fair laws, and opportunities for everyone regardless of what species they were born into. Council refugees often cried when they saw it for the first time. General Kevin Wright trained the new arrivals at the Alliance Defense Force Academy on Kepler-9. His mixed species units were learning to fight together in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. "Remember," Kevin told a class of human, Keelan, and Vex recruits, "your strength comes from your differences, not despite them. Humans think fast and adapt quickly. Keelans are strong and patient. Vex can process information in ways the rest of us can't imagine. Together, you're unstoppable. The training exercises proved his point. Alliance units consistently outperformed pure species groups in every test. They covered each other's weaknesses and amplified each other's strengths. Dr. Susan Carter made breakthrough after breakthrough in her research lab on the ancient world they had named Discovery. Working with Vex biotechnologists and Keelan metallurgists, her teams were unlocking secrets that the Council's scientists had missed for centuries. "Look at this," Susan said to her research partner, Dr. Mike Johnson, as she showed him the latest test results. By combining Vex biocircuits with human quantum processors, we can create communication systems that work instantly across any distance. The implications were huge. The Council still used message drones that took weeks to cross the galaxy. Alliance forces could coordinate their movements in real time, no matter how far apart they were. President Rachel Johnson, who had replaced Henry Wallace after his retirement, met with representatives from the Independent Systems Alliance in the capital city of New Geneva. The alliance had grown from humanity's original colonies to over 400 worlds in just 2 years. The latest membership applications, her chief of staff, Secretary Linda Martinez, said, as she placed a stack of documents on the president's desk. 15 more systems want to join us. Rachel looked through the applications with growing satisfaction. Agricultural worlds tired of having their food stolen to feed council bureaucrats. Mining colonies sick of seeing their resources shipped away while their families went hungry. Even some of the older, more established species were beginning to question whether the council really served their interests. The alliance worked on principles the council had abandoned long ago. Every member species had an equal vote, regardless of how old their civilization was or how many ships they controlled. Resources were shared based on need, not political connections. Most importantly, no species was forced to follow laws they hadn't helped create. Captain Tony Miller commanded the border patrol ships that kept Alliance space safe from Council raiders. His mixed crews had become legendary for their ability to work together under pressure. "Sir, we've got Council ships approaching the Perseus border," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Davis. 3 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. Tony smiled. "Send them our standard message. Alliance space is closed to Council military vessels. They have 10 minutes to change course." The Council ships kept coming. Tony wasn't surprised. They had been testing Alliance defenses for months, trying to find weaknesses that didn't exist. "All ships battle stations," Tony ordered. "Let's show them why that's a bad idea." The fight was over in less than an hour. The Council ships were built for intimidating weaker species, not for fighting opponents who could match their technology and exceed their tactics. 2 cruisers surrendered, 1 fled, and the carrier was disabled and boarded. What the Alliance forces found on the captured ships shocked even hardened veterans. The crew quarters were overcrowded and filthy. The food was barely edible. Many crew members showed signs of malnutrition and disease. "They're treating their own people like prisoners," Tony reported to Alliance Command. No wonder so many Council species want to defect. The contrast with Alliance ships was stark. Alliance crew members had clean quarters, good food, and medical care. They fought harder because they had something worth fighting for. Word of the victory spread quickly through both Alliance and Council space. On dozens of Council worlds, resistance groups took the news as a sign that change was possible. Riots broke out on worlds that had been peaceful for decades. The Council's response was predictable. More taxes, more restrictions, more punishment for anyone who questioned their authority. But every harsh measure drove more species toward the Alliance. Admiral Danny Rodriguez, now commanding the largest space fleet in known history, received daily reports of defections from Council space. Entire star systems were declaring independence and asking to join the Alliance. "At this rate, the Council will run out of member species before they run out of problems," Danny told his staff during their weekly briefing. His aide, Commander Steve Wilson, pulled up a map showing the current situation. Blue areas showed Alliance territory, red showed Council space, yellow showed contested systems. The map was becoming more blue every week. The Council still has the advantage in total ships and population, Steve noted, but their forces are spread thin trying to hold their territory together. Meanwhile, our forces are concentrated and unified. Danny nodded. The ancient ruins on Discovery had taught them valuable lessons about military strategy. The builders of those cities had faced a similar situation thousands of years ago. A corrupt empire crumbling, while a new alliance rose to replace it. The difference was that humanity had learned from history instead of repeating it. On Earth, now mostly empty except for caretaker forces, Jake Morrison walked through the abandoned United Nations building. The man who had started this whole process by walking out of the council chambers was now preparing for his new role as Alliance Diplomatic Coordinator. "It's strange," Jake told his companion, Deputy Director Nancy Wright, as they toured the empty halls. "We spent so long trying to be accepted by them. Now they're the ones begging for our attention." Indeed, secret communications from council members arrived daily. Some offered bribes for humanity to return. Others threatened dire consequences if the alliance continued to grow. All showed the same thing. The council was scared. They had good reason to be scared. The alliance was proving that their way wasn't the only way. More importantly, it was proving that their way wasn't even the best way. The Galactic Council was dying, and everyone knew it. Trade routes that had worked for 1,000 years were falling apart. Rebellion flared on dozens of worlds. The treasury was empty, and member species were refusing to pay their taxes. In the Yadur council chambers, the same Zephyrian prime minister, who had once dismissed humanity, now spoke in desperate tones to the remaining delegates. "We must act before it is too late," the prime minister said, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns. "The alliance grows stronger every day. Soon they will have more systems than we do." The Vorthan representative waved her tentacles in frustration. "You said humans were weak. You said they could never survive without us. Where is your wisdom now?" Other delegates murmured agreement. The Andromedans, the Tau Cedians, the Rigel Confederacy, all of them had lost territory. To alliance expansion, their colonies were declaring independence and joining humanity's new order. "We still have the largest military force," the Prime Minister insisted. "If we strike now, with everything we have, we can crush this rebellion before it spreads further." It was a desperate plan, but they were desperate beings. 3 years ago, the Council controlled over 2,000 star systems. Now they controlled less than 800, and more were leaving every month. Admiral Frank Lewis received the intelligence reports at Alliance Command on New Geneva. His network of spies in Council space had been sending warnings for weeks. "They're massing everything they have at the Vega staging area," reported Intelligence Chief Barbara Stevens as she showed Frank the latest reconnaissance photos. Over 1,500 ships, including their entire heavy battle fleet. Frank studied the images with a grim expression. The Council had pulled ships from every sector, leaving their remaining territory almost defenseless. It was the move of leaders who had run out of options. "They mean to end this war in one big battle," Frank said to his staff. "Win or lose everything on a single throw of the dice." Captain Lisa Harper, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, commanded the Alliance forces, preparing to meet the Council attack. Her ships were outnumbered 3-1, but she wasn't worried. Numbers meant nothing if you couldn't use them properly. "The Council thinks like they always have," Lisa told her captains during the final briefing. "Big ships, overwhelming force, intimidate the enemy into surrender. They don't understand that we're not the same species that begged for their approval 3 years ago." The Alliance fleet was smaller but more advanced. Every ship could repair itself during battle using Vex biotechnology. Their weapons were powered by energy systems found in the ancient ruins. Most importantly, their crews fought as unified teams, instead of competing species. The battle came at the Centauri Gate, the main jump point between Council space and the Alliance frontier. Council forces arrived in a massive formation designed to overwhelm enemy resistance through sheer size. What they found waiting for them changed everything. Alliance ships didn't form traditional battle lines. Instead, they moved like a school of fish, each vessel adapting to the actions of its neighbors. When Council ships fired on one target, 2 others appeared behind them. When they turned to face a new threat, the original target struck from an unexpected angle. Commander Gary Thompson commanded the Alliance ship Phoenix in the thick of the fighting. His mixed crew of humans, Keelans, and Vex worked together with a precision that amazed even him. "Keelan Engineering, I need more power to forward shields," Gary called out. "Power diverted," came the reply from Chief Engineer 6 Tor. "Human, weapons teams, targets locked." "Firing now," responded Gunnery Sergeant Helen Cruz. The Phoenix's shots disabled a Council cruiser that had been trying to ram an Alliance frigate. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out hundreds of times as Alliance crews demonstrated the advantages of true cooperation. The Council forces fought bravely, but they fought as separate species trying to coordinate with each other. Alliance forces fought as a single organism with many different parts. The tide turned when Alliance boarding teams, led by Captain Amy Bennett, captured the Council command ship intact. The ship's computers contained detailed information about Council fleet movements, supply lines, and defensive plans. "We have their complete strategic database," Amy reported to Fleet Command. "They have no secrets left." Within 6 hours, the mighty Council fleet was destroyed or captured. Over 800 ships fell into Alliance hands, along with their crews. But the real victory was what happened next. Instead of being thrown into prison camps, captured Council personnel were given a choice. They could return home, or they could join the Alliance and help build something better. To the Council leadership's horror, more than half chose to stay. "I have served the Tau Ceti Navy for 20 years, said Commander Velkan, a captured Tau Cetian officer. "In that time I have seen nothing but corruption, waste, and pointless wars. These Alliance beings treat me with more respect in one day than my own government showed in 2 decades. Stories like this spread throughout Council space faster than official news reports. The mighty Council military had been defeated by a force 1/3 its size. Even worse, many of their own people were choosing to join the enemy rather than come home. President Rachel Johnson addressed the Alliance Council from New Geneva as reports of victory poured in from across the galaxy. Representatives from 600 worlds listened as she spoke. "Today we have proven that our way works," Rachel said. "We have shown that cooperation is stronger than domination, that diversity is more powerful than uniformity, that freedom can defeat tyranny, even when tyranny has bigger guns." But the real proof came in the weeks after the battle. Alliance forces didn't invade Council territory to claim conquest. Instead, they sent medical ships to help wounded Council worlds. They sent food to planets where the population was starving. They offered trade agreements to species that had been cut off from galactic commerce. Dr. Susan Carter led the medical teams that landed on the Vorthan homeworld. The planet's population was sick with a disease that Council doctors couldn't cure. Using a combination of human medicine and Vex biotechnology, Susan's teams ended the plague in less than a month. "Why do you help us?" asked the Vorthan planetary governor. "We were your enemies." Susan smiled as she packed up her equipment. "You were never our enemies. Your leaders were our enemies. Your people deserve the same chances as anyone else." It was a message that resonated across the galaxy. The Alliance wasn't interested in conquest or revenge. They wanted to build something better for everyone. The old Council, meanwhile, was falling apart completely. The Prime Minister who had rejected humanity's membership was removed from power by his own people. The Andromedan Empire split into 7 separate nations. The Rigel Confederacy declared bankruptcy and dissolved. General Kevin Wright established peacekeeping forces on worlds where Council authority had collapsed. His mixed species units kept order, while local populations decided their own futures. "Most of these worlds don't want to fight," Kevin reported to Alliance Command. "They just want food, medicine, and a chance to rebuild. We can give them that." The Alliance grew by 30 systems per week as former Council territories joined voluntarily. Each new member brought resources, knowledge, and hope for a better future. Jake Morrison, now serving as Alliance Foreign Minister, met with delegations from the remaining Council fragments. Most came to negotiate surrender terms. Some came to beg for mercy. A few came to ask how they could join the Alliance themselves. "You must understand," Jake told a group of former council leaders. "We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're trying to show that there's a better way to live. If you're ready to treat all species as equals, you're welcome to join us." It was the same message humanity had hoped to hear 30 years earlier. The difference was that now humanity was in a position to make it real. 5 years after humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, the galaxy was a completely different place. Fleet Admiral Lisa Harper stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship Liberty, watching the formal surrender of the last council. Holdout forces. The war was finally over. "Admiral, the Rigel Defense Fleet is requesting permission to join our formation," reported Communications Officer Peter Davis. "That's the last of them." Lisa nodded. "Grant permission, and send a message to all ships, and the shooting war is over. Now the real work begins." The real work was rebuilding a galaxy that had been torn apart by centuries of council misrule. It was a massive task, but the Alliance had advantages the old council never possessed. On New Terra, the Alliance capital world, President Rachel Johnson signed the Galactic Charter of Rights in a ceremony attended by representatives from over 1,000 worlds. The document established principles that the old council had never considered important. "Every sentient species has the right to self-determination," Rachel read from the charter. "No being shall be judged inferior because of their species, their age, or their technology level. All civilizations have something valuable to contribute to galactic society." The ceremony was broadcast across known space. On worlds that had spent centuries under council oppression, beings wept as they heard words they had never thought possible. Dr. Susan Carter, now director of the Alliance Science Council, worked with researchers from 40 different species to unlock the secrets left behind by the ancient builders. Each new discovery brought improvements to life across the galaxy. The old builders understood something the council never learned, Susan explained to a gathering of scientists on Discovery. They knew that different ways of thinking lead to better solutions. A human sees a problem one way, a Vex sees it differently, a Keelan has yet another approach. Together we see the whole picture. The results spoke for themselves. Diseases that had plagued entire species for millennia were cured in months. Planets that had been strip-mined by council corporations were restored to health. Technology that had stagnated for centuries suddenly leaped forward. Captain Amy Bennett explored the galactic core in her ship Pathfinder, making discoveries that rewrote the history books. The ancient builders hadn't been just one species, they had been an alliance much like the current one. "They faced the same choice we did," Amy reported to Alliance Command. "They could submit to a corrupt empire or build something better. They chose to build just like we did." The ruins Amy found showed a civilization that had lasted for thousands of years, where hundreds of species worked together as equals. It had only fallen when internal conflicts broke up their unity. "We won't make the same mistake they did," promised President Johnson when she received Amy's report. "We've learned from their example." Jake Morrison, now serving as the Alliance's chief diplomat, met with former council leaders who wanted to understand how the new system worked. Many of them couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Your worlds are prosperous," said former Zephyrian, Prime Minister Krytel during a visit to New Terra. "Your people are happy. Your military is strong. How is this possible without a central authority controlling everything?" Jake smiled. "That's exactly why it works. When people have a voice in their own government, they work harder to make it succeed. When species are treated as equals, they contribute their best ideas instead of just following orders." The transformation wasn't limited to politics. Trade flowed freely between alliance worlds, creating prosperity that spread to even the most remote systems. Art and culture flourished as different species shared their traditions with each other. On Haven, Administrator Paul Adams watched the graduation ceremony for the latest class of Alliance administrators. The students came from dozens of different worlds and species, all learning to work together. 20 years ago, most of these beings would never have met each other, Paul told his assistant, Deputy Administrator Carol Foster. Now they're going out to run star systems together. The Alliance had grown to encompass most of the known galaxy, but it wasn't an empire in the old sense. Each world kept its own culture and traditions. Each species maintained its unique identity. What they shared was a commitment to cooperation and mutual respect. General Kevin Wright commanded Alliance defense forces that were more like peacekeepers than conquerors. Their job was to protect the weak and keep trade routes open, not to intimidate anyone into submission. "We get more volunteers than we can train," Kevin reported to the Alliance Council. "Beings from across the galaxy want to serve in an organization that actually stands for something positive." The Alliance military was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Soldiers from different species served together as equals. Officers were promoted based on merit, not on what species they were born into. Most importantly, they fought to protect freedom, not to expand territory. Captain Tony Miller, now an admiral commanding the border fleet, rarely had to fire his weapons. Most problems were solved through negotiation and compromise rather than force. "Funny how much easier it is to keep the peace when people actually trust their government," Tony observed during a staff meeting. "When beings know their voices matter, they're less likely to resort to violence." The few remaining pockets of resistance were handled with patience rather than brutality. Instead of crushing rebellions, Alliance forces addressed the causes of discontent. Usually this meant removing corrupt local officials and establishing fair representation. Chief Engineer Maria Santos oversaw the construction of massive orbital habitats that provided homes for refugees from the old Council territories. Each habitat was designed to accommodate multiple species with different environmental needs. "Building for diversity is more complex than building for uniformity," Maria explained to her engineering teams, "but the results are worth the extra effort. These habitats will be home to beings who never thought they'd live to see freedom." The habitats became symbols of the Alliance way of doing things. Instead of forcing everyone to adapt to a single standard, they created spaces where different needs could be met simultaneously. Dr. Mike Johnson, Susan's research partner, made the breakthrough that everyone had been hoping for. Using technology from the ancient ruins combined with techniques from a dozen different species, his team developed faster-than-light travel that was safe, cheap, and available to anyone. The old council kept this kind of technology restricted to their inner circle. Mike announced at the unveiling ceremony, "We're giving it to everyone. Free travel means free people." The new travel technology changed everything. Families separated by vast distances could reunite. Traders could reach markets that had been impossible to access. Most importantly, ideas and cultures could spread freely across the galaxy. Ambassador Danny Rodriguez, Jake's successor as chief diplomat, met with representatives from beyond the galactic rim. Other galaxies had heard about the Alliance and wanted to establish contact. "Word travels fast," Danny told the Alliance Council. "Other civilizations want to know how we made this work. They want to try the same thing in their own territories." The Alliance's influence was spreading beyond anything the old Council had ever achieved. But unlike the Council's expansion through force and intimidation, Alliance influence spread through example and invitation. President Johnson, now in her second term, addressed the 5th Annual Alliance Assembly. Representatives from 1,200 worlds listened as she spoke about the future. 5 years ago, humanity was told we weren't wise enough for full membership in the galactic community, Johnson said. Today, we help lead a community that includes more worlds than the old council ever dreamed of controlling. She paused and looked out at the diverse crowd of beings in the assembly hall. We didn't prove them wrong by becoming more like them. We proved them wrong by showing that there was a better way to be. The applause that followed came from beings who had never thought they would live to see such a day. Species that had been enemies for centuries now worked together as partners. Worlds that had been poor under council rule now prospered in alliance space. Jake Morrison, now retired but still serving as an advisor, watched the ceremony from the gallery. The man who had walked out of the council chambers 6 years earlier smiled as he saw the results of that decision. Humanity had left the Galactic Council because they were told they weren't good enough to be equal partners. In response, they had built something better than the Council had ever been. The galaxy had learned that when you push humanity too far, they don't just push back. They find a new direction entirely. And sometimes that new direction leads to places no one had ever imagined possible. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of true galactic cooperation had begun. And it had all started with one simple act of defiance by a species that refused to accept that they weren't good enough. The galaxy was better for it.